living the Tao Te Ching, this 2,600-year-old, some people call it the greatest, the wisest book ever written. It speaks so much about relationships. Tao, the word Tao, means the great way. It's just another synonym for God, or source, or spirit, or that which is the all-creating. And one of the things that it says that was really helpful to me, probably the most helpful thing in it, was that whenever you have a conflict of any kind, in any relationship, whenever you have a conflict, that the person who is willing to be of Tao, of God, of Source, is the one who will practice forgiveness, or will go to the person that they have a conflict with and bring love to it, instead of the freeze out, instead of the anger, instead of the hatred, instead of the revenge, instead of so many of the things that we do when we have conflicts in our lives. We just don't talk to that person. Like, I'm not talking to that. I'm not talking to him. He's going to call me because I called the last time. But the person who lives the Tao life, the life of a higher consciousness, is the person who says, I end all conflicts on love, which is where we all come from. We come from a source that is love. So for me, that has been just so useful. I have 8 children, and that's been just extraordinarily helpful for me to be in a relationship where I can always be of love, where I can just, and so then you don't even, conflicts become something that are no longer present, because conflict requires two-ness. In order to have a conflict, you have to have two different opinions or whatever. But if you live in oneness, if you really see yourself in everyone else, see yourself in all the things, including the plants, including the animals, and including all beings and so on. If you just suspend this ego part of you and just see yourself in that other person, then your arguments are really with yourself, and your hatreds are really about yourself. And you begin to really see that I don't have to project anything onto anyone else that isn't what I choose to be. And it's having the curiosity, it's having the willingness to say, this isn't working for me. It's like you get bit by a snake, and you're bit, okay? But the bite doesn't kill you. You're still there. You don't die from a snake bite. You don't die from you don't get hurt from what somebody else does to you. It's the venom that continues to pour through your system after the bite. That's what causes difficulties in relationships and so on. And when you recognize that to be angry, to be full of revenge, I could bring anybody in this crew in here and do a muscle test with them and ask them a question, to hold your arm out like this, and think about somebody who's abandoned you or abused you, who did something that you didn't like, who borrowed money from you and didn't pay it back, who walked out on you, someone that you hate, and just for a moment, hold your arm out as hard as you can. I'm going to put 2 fingers right here, and I'm going to push down, and you think about getting revenge. You just think about, even if you don't want to do that, just think the thought of, I'm going to get even with that bastard for what he did or what she did. I'm going to really get even with him. And you push, and that you find out that they have no strength when you think a thought of revenge. There's no strength in there. Kinesiology, it's a very simple test. Then what we just demonstrated here is the power of the thoughts that we have. What a thought of shame, a thought of anger, a thought of revenge, what it does to the muscles of our body. The muscles of it's like the reason I ask you to tell me a lie, is because I wanted to test your body, because your body wasn't made by your parents. We like to think that our bodies were made by our parents. That's because you look a certain way and all of that. But if we take the tiny little drop of protoplasm that created you, and we try to find out its origin, and we take it all the way back to subatomic particles and reduce it, we find out when we put it in a particle accelerator and rev it up at 250,000 miles an hour and collide it, and we open it up, there's nothing there. That you came from the invisible. You came from Source. It's the spirit that gives life. So that once you understand that this body of yours is a creation not of human beings, but it's a creation of God. It's a creation of Source. It came from nowhere. and an invisible source and manifest it into the world of the physical. And so it only reacts to truth, because it was created by truth. So once you lie, this is an ultimate lie detector test. That's why I always say we could have saved $93 million with President Clinton. It's like, come on. Did you have sex or didn't you? Let's get over this, But now you're using an instrument not of human beings. All of our bodies are divine creations, and they only react to truth with strength. The truth that when you go weak, you're going against your Tao nature. Your true nature is not revenge. Your true nature is not hatred. You came from love, and you have to stay in that state. And once you learn that, once you get that, like having that demonstrated could change your life. Just that moment could change forever.
Inspiration responds to our attentiveness in various and sometimes unexpected ways. For example, when I began writing this book, I debated between the two titles, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Destiny, or Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. One day, while I was swimming in the ocean, I was going back and forth in my mind, trying out both titles. Still uncertain, when I'd finished my swim, I called Reed Tracy, who's the president and CEO of my publishing company at Hay House, from a payphone to get his opinion about the title. While I waited for him to answer, the word calling appeared on the miniature screen of the telephone. Nothing else, just calling. And then the word began to flash on and off as if it were trying to get my attention. When Reed answered, I told him what had just occurred, and we both agreed on Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, for the title of this book and this program. All of this may appear to be nothing more than a silly coincidence, but I know better. I think of the word inspiration as meaning being in spirit. When we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to spirit within us. Being inspired is an experience of joy. We feel completely connected to our source and totally on purpose. Our creative juices flow, and we bring exceptionally high energy to our daily life. We're not judging others or ourselves. We're uncritical and unbothered by behaviors or attitudes that, in uninspired moments, are frustrating. Our heart sings an appreciation for every breath, and we're tolerant, joyful, and loving. Being in spirit isn't necessarily restricted to the work we do or the activities of our daily life. We can be inspired and at the same time be unsure of what vocation to pursue or what activities we want to schedule. Inspiration is a simple recognition of spirit within ourselves. It's a return to that invisible, formless field from which all things emanate, a field of energy that I call intention in my previous book, The Power of Intention. My experience with being in spirit. When I'm in spirit, I have a feeling of contentment, but more than this, I experience joy. I'm able to receive the vibrational energies of my source, call them voices or messages or silent reminders, even invisible suggestions or what have you, but they're vibrations of energy that I'm able to align with as I get myself out of the way. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of the world's great geniuses, once remarked, quote, "When I am, as it were, completely myself, entirely alone and of good cheer, say traveling in a carriage or walking after a good meal or during the night when I cannot sleep, it is on such occasions that my ideas flow best and most abundantly. Whence and how they come, I know not, nor can I foresee them." End of quote. We don't have to be a genius to know what Mozart speaks of. The same force in a different way is flowing through you and me right now. I've learned to remove resistance to the free flow of this spiritual energy by reminding myself to align with it, or to be in spirit in my thoughts and my expectations. When I sit down to write, my desire is to invite spirit to express through me. And I encourage ideas to flow freely. Like Mozart, I'm connected as if it were to my source in spirit, thinking and expecting to be the instrument of my spiritual source. Ideas flow, and whatever assistance I need just shows up. And, like Mozart, I can't describe how the ideas come, and I can't force them. Staying in spirit seems to be the secret to this feeling of being inspired. I also find that inspiration flows in other areas of my life when my primary mission is like what Michael Berg so beautifully describes in Becoming Like God, Kabbalah, and our ultimate destiny. Quote, just as every being is God's business, every being becomes our business as well. Unquote. That is, being inspired necessitates the willingness to suspend ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am and what I have in a completely unlimited fashion.
When you feel inspired, everything works. The reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired. And Patanjali said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. There's some very important wisdom in that. This idea of finding yourself inspired means that you allow these dormant forces, these things that are in every single one of us, to come alive. Consciousness begins to expand. Things begin to show up in your life. You begin to manage the coincidences of your life.
I wrote some textbooks back in the early 70s talking about the importance of goals. And I can't have them all withdrawn, but I think that I watch my kids, and some of them are in college now, and some of them are out, and they're worrying about what they're going to major in, and trying to set a goal. And I tell them just to try to just enjoy every single moment, and just let yourself be guided. I think it's great advice for parenting. It's just guide, then just step aside and recognize that all of us have the anchor of the universe located within us. That's what Lao Tzu said. It's in every single one of us. And let yourself be swept with it. Let yourself be taken by it, rather than getting your individual ego in there saying, well, this is what I'm going to do. And it's like Arthur Miller, the great playwright. He was asked a question at an interview with the New York Times. He was 91 years old, and they said to him, are you working on another play? And he said, I don't know. He said, but I probably am. And I understood exactly what he meant. I mean, I just finished writing a book that I put a year of my life into, This Wish is Fulfilled. And last night, I called the president of Hay House, my best friend, Reed Tracy, and I said, there's an idea germinating inside of me that I think will ultimately become a book. I don't know even quite, I just know it's starting to excite me. And I've often been called the father of motivation all over the world. They've got this title they put next to me, and I always say, if I have to be the father of anything other than the 8 children that I have, I would choose to be the father of inspiration, because I think it's the reverse of motivation. Motivation is when you get a hold of an idea and you take it where you believe that you can take it with your goals, and any obstacles that come along, you're going to plow through them, you're going to make this thing happen. And that's motivation. You get a hold of an idea. Inspiration is an idea gets a hold of you, and it takes you where you were intended to go even before you were ever conceived. I can't imagine you as a little boy in Germany were thinking about, being one of the most famous authors in the world. I mean, and how it all comes about, and what's going to come next for you. And like you said, I don't even know what words are going to come out next. It's for me, it's just being completely immersed in the now and surrendering, just like turning it over. That's just what I do. I turn it over. And the most amazing things happen when you turn it over. That's when God comes into your life. That's what Carl Jung called synchronicity. You have almost like a collaboration with fate. You're letting it all unfold. In the midst of your writing, I don't know if it happens for you, but
there'll be something I'm not sure or whatever, and all of a sudden I'll go to the mail or somebody will pick up the phone and it'll be right there, and it's like, after a while you start to almost count on it. You start to realize that you don't have to do anything. You can just let it come to you.
Yes.
So I don't think you can be totally free of goals. Like, I have to go to the bathroom. So I'm going to have a goal to go to the toilet, so I don't think I can get totally out of that goal place, but by and large in my life, I just let it be. I think the Beatles had it right. When you find yourself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will come an answer, let it be. I don't know, that's my theme.
I think there is a time in people's lives when there is a place for goals, but the important thing is the nature of the goal, and if it arises out of inspiration, as you call it, or a vision that comes to you of something that wants to be created through you. It could be a book. When the Power of Now came to me, I felt this urge suddenly of writing. I bought a yellow notepad and began writing the first line, and at that moment I knew it's a book, and I knew what it was about, and it was very different from the kind of casual writing I had done before over the years, sometimes after sitting with people in having a session, counseling sessions, doing meditation with small groups. I would sometimes say things and then later I would write them down because that was new to me too, but I said things that I didn't know before they came out. So that was a more casual writing, and then suddenly an energy stream came of a very different, more empowered kind of writing, and from the very first moment I knew it's a book. So in that sense one could say I suddenly had the vision of writing a book, one could say. As one could say I had a goal of producing a book. But it wasn't something that came as with a promise of delivering some kind of personal fulfillment to me in any way, that I can become famous through that, or I can make money through that, or I can become powerful through that, people are going to listen to me. All these could have been motivations for writing a book, but it was more like something, a realization of something that wants to come into being, and then you help it along, you go with it, you become a channel through which that wants to come into being comes into being.
Everything, remember, has a dharma. Every creature, every rose, and every human being has a dharma. You're already fulfilling it physically. You're already in the bodies that you were intended to be in. Remember what I said before, it is not about where you are, it's about what direction you're headed. And as long as you know you're heading in the direction of staying here in meaning. Now, this concept of a calling, I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Inspiration, in Spirit. And the subtitle is called Your Ultimate Calling. So I'm going to introduce a word here to help you to identify your calling. And that word is passion. And it doesn't make any difference to me whether that passion has anything to do with making a living, or it's a part of the DOT, the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. What is it that you find passion about? And the only condition I place on it is that it is in alignment with God or with your source. All right? So that your passion, if your passion is about killing other people, for example, If your passion is about stealing, if your passion is about, I often said that there's two ways to have the tallest building in town. One of the ways to have the tallest building in town, always, is to go around and knock down anybody else's building when they start getting taller than yours. So as soon as they get up, if you're at the 44 floors and they get to 43, 44, you just go over and you put some explosives in there and you just blow it up. And you say, I have the tallest building in town. And this is, by the way, our collective ego. This is what we do in our society and in our world, and which is about, if you really want to know my passion and my calling, it's about shifting the entire consciousness of this planet before I leave it. And that's why the film titled The Shift is so significant to me, because I know that if I can get 10 million people to watch that film, The Shift, if I can get 10 million people in America and Canada to watch that film, that we reach something called pi, 3.1416, remember? And if you can get 3.1416% of a population to align, the rest of it's called a critical mass in physics. You reach what is called phase transition. And if you align enough people or electrons or subatomic particles up and align them in a certain way in an energy field, and you reach what they call the 100th monkey, when you reach that point, all the rest of the electrons or the people in that energy field begin to align as well. And we have aligned ourselves collectively with a consciousness that allows for people to knock down other people's buildings. The other way to have the tallest building in town is to always work on your own building and not be concerned with anybody else's building or what anyone else out there is doing, or being consumed with trying to compete with or win or defend. To listen to your calling. So your calling is the thing within you that has your attention, that has your passionate attention. And it doesn't make any difference whether it makes sense to anybody else. It's the thing that you feel inside of you that you're here for. It's Mr. Holland in Mr. Holland's opus. And here's the secret, here's the thing that I learned. That it's the presence of the passion. That when you have the presence of the passion within you for what it is that you feel is your calling, everything else will take care of itself. That is an indication that you have God within you and guiding you. The word enthusiasm, and theos, iasm, translates to the God within in Greek. The God within. When you are enthusiastic about something, anything, when you have that kind of internal knowing that this is what I'm doing. And sometimes you have to, that Shakespeare's, he wasn't just a great writer, he was an incredible philosopher. Probably the most famous lines from Shakespeare are from Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. And that's a very profound question. But what follows that is much more profound. He said, after to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the minds of men to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and thus by opposing end them. You have to ask the question, and that's what this program is about, and that's what the movie is about, and that's what the book is about, and that's what all of it is about. To be or not to be. Am I going to be who I came into this world to be, and there's something inside of me that has always been calling me to it? Or am I going to allow the slings and arrows of an outrageous fortune that has been imposed upon me by others to dictate my dharma? That's really the question. And it's a question that you can answer and respond to and live with.
Do you have a definition for crisis? Like, what is a crisis?
It's a gift. It's a gift. Everything is. It's interesting you mentioned The Power of Intention, because I wrote that book in what you would call a crisis. My wife and I had separated. I was 60 years old. You don't break up when you're 60 and have 7 kids. You know, you do that in junior high school. And for about a year and a half, I was in the closest thing I've ever had to a depression, a clinical depression. Didn't want to get up, just couldn't figure it out. My wife had met somebody else, had moved in with them and so on. And my children encouraged me to just start writing again. They said, if you just write about it. And I really didn't want to write about it. But I had lost a lot of weight. People thought I was sick. People thought I was dying, and so on. And that book was just channeled to me. And I think in moments of crisis, what it teaches us is to become more compassionate. And compassion is at the heart of higher consciousness and enlightenment. The Dalai Lama said that if we could take every child on the planet and have them meditate on compassion for 1 hour a week, every child at the age of 5, in one generation we could eliminate all violence on Earth. So that's how powerful he believes compassion to be. And I understood that, because The Power of Intention was a major shift for me. I began to look less flippantly and less egotistically at the world, and came from a place of inner grace or kindness, gentleness, love, what I call divine love. So that I've always felt that it is not always so important to just be in a state of gratitude when things go well, and when you're around people that smell good and that make you feel good and that look good, but it's the low points in our life, reminders that there's something inside of us that wants to have an outpouring of love. See, even the miser who loves his gold doesn't really love his gold because of the gold. The gold is just another thing. It doesn't have any love in it. It's just an object, a metal object. The reason that the miser loves his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for the gold. And that's true of everything and everyone. It's learning to have this outpouring of love, and you don't just have to have it for people and events, but you can have it for this microphone, and you can have it for the cameras, and you can have it for the wall, and the table, and the chair, and everything that you encounter. And I think for me, probably what you would call a crisis in my life was a diagnosis of leukemia 3 years ago. And when I first heard that word leukemia has cancer all around it. Cancer has a lot of fear all around it. And even if you aren't afraid to die, which I'm not, there's no point in being afraid of that. There's no point in being afraid of anything. You still, there's that inbred sort of psychic kind of awareness that cancer and fear go together, and so it was. It turned out to be one of the great blessings in my life. I encountered John of God down in Brazil, and was able to have just a magical experience around it. But what happened is, when I had this healing and leukemia was taken out of my body, it wasn't so much that leukemia was taken out. What was taken out was fear, and it was replaced by love. Almost immediately, not almost, immediately after I had what they call the removal of the sutures, a week after the surgery, this remote surgery, I started feeling just love for everyone. I walked out of the room that morning, 7 days after the surgery, and I looked at my children and I just put my arms around them. I said, "You've just never looked more beautiful." And I looked at the ocean, and it looked like just a big bowl of love soup. And the trees looked fluorescent, and every person that I walked by and looked at just became just objects of love.